You may think that you can keep your thoughts hidden and to yourself, but your body deceives you. When a man's mind is constantly steeped in thoughts of a sexual nature, other people pick up on it. A good man has good thoughts, just as a lewd man has lewd thoughts. Be conscious of the thoughts you choose to think, for over time they will mold your character in ways you may not even realize. This is why it is not just semen retention, but the total abstention of sexual fantasy that is most beneficial to man. The SR Manuscript. 2 years of writing and research on the topic of semen retention. If you wish to physically own a copy of the ancient archives, then this book is for you. A creep is perhaps the last thing any man would wish to be labelled as. The word creep carries a variety of negative connotations to the man's identity. It usually implies an unattractiveness or sleaziness about him. A person of a perverted persuasion that makes others uncomfortable to be around. The meaning behind the word is not only a statement about one's behavior, but also about one's appearance and one's psychological makeup. The word creep encompasses the various traits of a so-called degenerate. You'll notice in both these terms they imply a deterioration of not only the moral faculties, but also the physical appearance. Various writers of the past have asserted morality and physicality to be intrinsically connected. In ancient Greece, the concept of beauty was as much to do with physical attributes as it was to do with morality and virtue. Often, the term creep is used to signify a man expressing sexual forwardness to a woman who is showing no signs of sexual reciprocation towards him. Displaying unreciprocated behavior with the sole intent of trying to make the girl like you will be often met with suspicion. What makes one try to induce attraction in an already uninterested party? Excess sexual desire. An untamed sex drive. A man not in control of his sexual appetite will more than likely break behavioral norms to try and acquire sex. A woman's mind is fine-tuned to pick up on the subtle signs of social behavior from men, as it assists them in making their best choice of mate. Mate selection is a major part of their biological imperative. A man going to great lengths to try and induce sexual attraction that hasn't already occurred naturally will usually be seen as desperate. A man that is desperate for sex. There is nothing wrong with trying to chat up a woman. It is the persistence after her showing signs of uninterest that generally cause this negative response. An overly strong sex drive often comes from a preoccupation with sex, accompanied by the long-term habit of masturbation. Masturbation reflects an unnatural way of living and of thought. It implies perversion of the sexual function. The solitary practice is often associated with social isolation, unattractiveness, low social value, and many other negative traits. In today's society, pornography has become so easily accessible and so widespread that many men get hooked into the practice from a young age. The effect this is having on today's young men and their manhood seems quite apparent, if not clearly obvious. Manliness is going down. General weakness and submissiveness is going up. Perhaps there are other factors at play here too, though I suspect the drastic increase in opportunity for masturbation to be a major one. This is why we must refrain from not only masturbation, but also from thoughts that stimulate the sexual organs. These habits imprint immorality into the character, filth into the soul, and leave their own mark on one's appearance. Wild animals in their natural environment adhere to a mating season that regulates their sexual behaviors. Masturbation rarely occurs. When animals enter the unnatural environment of captivity and their alone time increases, Perversions, such as masturbation, occur more often. A man with too strong a sexual nature reveals certain elements about himself through his words, actions, and behavior. When a man's biggest concern is sexual release, the moral faculties deteriorate, the quality of character is weakened, and a sense of nervousness permeates his entire being. Such qualities are universally thought of as unattractive and even repulsive, particularly to the opposite sex. One's manhood is wrapped up within his genitals and their secretions. That is why these secretions must be preserved and only ever used for the purposes of procreation. A man with his manhood intact displays traits of strength, courage, confidence, and all other aspects we associate with masculinity. Aside from behavior, there is also a physical element to the term creep. This relates to visual signs of physical degeneration. We often hear that the difference between a confident guy and a creepy guy is his level of attractiveness. That an attractive man acting forward with a woman is seen as confident, whereas an unattractive man acting forward with a woman is seen as creepy. This is often argued as an unfair bias against men, though I would think that this is just natural biology playing out. We do not wish to pursue that which we do not deem as attractive. A woman that rejects a man purely on looks has often been said to be shallow. But looks are not only skin deep, they are often tied into deeper elements of the person's physical and psychological makeup. A man's appearance gives us a window into his soul. We can extract a lot of non-physical information through the physical attributes of one's appearance, with a reasonable level of accuracy. Some studies have even hypothesized that attractiveness may be a way to gauge one's level of physical health and immunity, which is a highly relevant factor for mate selection. Our thoughts color our behavior and become perceptible to many of those around us. Certain thoughts trigger certain emotional states, and certain emotional states trigger hormones to be secreted, and the balance of these hormonal secretions influence our physiology. It influences how we think, how we act, how we communicate, and so on. It is through this process of hormonal secretion that thoughts can manifest themselves into physicality. We divulge much information regarding our mental landscape through the interactions we have with others. When it comes to social interaction, women in general are more attuned and sensitive to the signs and cues that a man puts out during conversation. Thus, behaviors seen as creepy usually imply a deeper issue with that man's nature and physiological state that can serve as a red flag or warning about engaging with this individual. Thoughts of perversion, greed, hate, and other negative forces over time influence not only our psychological state, but our face, our movements, and our organism as a whole. These visual manifestations play a large role in how people instinctively feel about us. We say not to judge a book by its cover, but overlook the fact that the cover reveals much about the book. The outer manifestations of a man give us a window into his inner landscape. Thus, these external signs are very important for mate choice and will never be ignored or looked past. Thoughts influence habits. Habits influence appearance. An example of this would be someone who thinks physical pleasure as most important, thus choosing to live a hedonistic lifestyle in which they do not take good care of their physical health. They may drink too much, smoke too much, sleep too late, and thus the consequences of such choices begin to show up in the face and within their physical form. What started as a seed of thought over time manifests its physical equivalent. If a man's appearance looks run down and exhausted, then that is giving us a window into his state of mind, state of health, and perhaps even way of life. There are exceptions, of course, but multiple signs of unattractiveness and physical deterioration that exceed the standard of one's age is often suggestive of an unhealthy way of living, of an unhealthy organism, and in mate selection, this is a red flag. We are often taught to not take responsibility for our looks and resign ourselves to our genetic inheritance. Our genetics do play a very significant role here, but as time goes on, the environmental factors, the aspects of lifestyle and thought begin to take precedence over the way and speed at which we age. The habit of moral thought, sexual restraint, and semen retention will pay you dividends in life. Much of an animal's physiological resources are allocated to reproduction and thus are said to affect aging and longevity. Many studies have shown reproduction and reproductive activity to speed up the aging process, deteriorate the organism, and hasten death. As previously noted, a creep is often seen as a degenerate, that is, someone who has deteriorated morally and/or physically. Thus, to avoid such an outcome, we must avoid degenerative practices. The preservation of the sexual energies has been said since ancient times to preserve the life essence, to prevent degeneration, to strengthen moral integrity, and to inspire the development of talent and genius. It is regenerative. A body that doesn't thrive off the sexual function can invest more energy into the mental function, into the spiritual function, and into all other biological functions that take place in the body, simply due to the surplus of resources accumulated from not dissipating the sexual force. A man who constantly ejaculates is a man who is always satiated sexually, and thus the motivation that comes from the sexual power is dissipated. This sexual energy is life energy, and without it, our motivation is gone. We cannot move mountains, create masterpieces, or inspire the world without the spark of sexual energy to spur us on to high achievement. It is this sexual energy that inspires the development of deep insight and great talent. Semen retention is not the suppression of sexual energy, it is the prevention of its dissipation that occurs when one ejaculates. For many of those that grow up in today's world, isolation and smartphone access make this habit a tough one to break. If you find yourself in this position and are struggling to fight the urge to masturbate, then you need to change up your lifestyle. First and foremost, increase your frequency of contact with other people. This may be a challenge for the natural introvert, but this introversion of yours has contributed to the sexual habit, so gather up some courage and put yourself outside of your comfort zone, even if only for a short time, once or twice a week. An active life filled with other people reduces opportunities to fantasize and masturbate. Living in a share house, joining a sport or gaming club, living with a family member or partner, all such arrangements that encourage more social activity discourage the habit of masturbation. You can turn almost any hobby into a social activity. If you are a writer, artist, or musician, start going to more events. Make friends to hang out with and expand your social circle. Join a club of your interest. Take classes on something you are interested in. Getting more social will give you less chance to lose yourself in sexual fantasy. Sports and exercise. Moving your body and playing sports easily gets your mind off of sex. Running, weightlifting, playing soccer. All such activities help our mind to switch gears and get out of the sexual state. You can start by setting your timer for 20 to 30 minutes and running around the park or doing push-ups and sit-ups or whatever gets you moving. The activity itself matters less as long as you are engaging physically in something. Furthermore, a body that has been thoroughly exercised during the day should find no trouble falling asleep when night comes around. A cold shower often kills the sexual instinct. Taking a cold shower regularly will help cool the passions and stop the feelings from becoming too intense. Get into the habit of taking cool to cold water showers regularly, and you will find it easier to refrain from the act. Don't just try it once. Really try and follow a routine such as every morning for 3 to 5 minutes. Feel the difference it has on your system. There are physical benefits here that will extend beyond just cooling the sex drive. If you find yourself successfully refraining for a time, but then suddenly relapsing, renew your motivation by watching videos and reading books. As Zig Ziglar says, motivation is like taking a bath. If you stop doing it, you begin to stink. Above all, remember this concept. The thoughts you think will dictate the things you do, and this shapes the character you become, both inside and out. Lewd thoughts will make a lewd person. Immoral thoughts make an immoral character. Degenerate practices will degenerate the body. For the sake of yourself and your relations with others, refrain from manifesting the qualities of creepiness. Commit to semen retention and the eradication of immoral thought. With this goal firmly placed in your mind, you will experience more energy, more harmony, and more success in any field. Ultimately, you will develop more life.